Across the ages and tucked away in the hidden corners of our world lie very mysterious artifacts that defy explanation, challenging our understanding of history itself. From ancient mechanisms with unbelievable sophistication to mysterious figures that hint at otherworldly visitors, these objects invite us to question what we truly know. Join us as we delve into the shadows of the past to uncover the top 5 mysterious artifacts that some believe offer undeniable proof of alien existence. Are these relics mere products of human ingenuity, or do they hold the keys to extraterrestrial encounters? Well, let's take a look and find out. Starting off today, we have the aluminum wedge of Aiud. This aluminum wedge is a curious object that was found in Romania back in 1974. Imagine someone digging in the ground and stumbling upon a metal object only to discover that it's not just any piece of metal, but one that seems to defy explanation. The wedge is made of aluminum, and what makes it particularly mystifying is that it was found with ancient mastodon bones, which are like the bones of a big prehistoric elephant. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Tests on the wedge could suggest it's about 250,000 years old. Very puzzling because humans weren't known to create or use aluminum until much more recently, like just over 200 years ago. Aluminum requires a very complex process to make, so finding such an old aluminum object is absolutely baffling. Because of its age and the context in which it was found, some people think the wedge might point to advanced ancient civilizations that we know nothing about, or even to visitors from outer space who left it behind. They wonder if these might be the only plausible explanations for such an anachronistic artifact. However, scientists and archaeologists are generally skeptical, which I guess is a good place to be when you're in the scientific field. They usually look for more ordinary explanations before jumping to conclusions about ancient astronauts or lost civilizations. In the case of the aluminum wedge of Aiud, they question whether the dating might be incorrect or if the context of its discovery might have been misunderstood. They suggest it could be a more recent object that somehow ended up buried with much older bones. In simple terms, while the wedge is a real head scratcher that invites some absolutely wild theories, most experts do believe there is likely a down-to-earth explanation, even if we haven't figured it out yet. It's definitely a great example of how mysterious findings can spark our imagination about the past, but we do also need to carefully examine the evidence before we jump to conclusions, alright? We're looking for answers here, not just ideas. Coming up next today, we have the Dogū Figures. These figures are intriguing little statues that were made thousands of years ago during the Jomon period in ancient Japan, which lasted from about 14,000 BC to 300 BC. These clay figures are often small enough to hold in your hand and have some very distinctive features that definitely make them stand out. They typically have large, wide eyes, small arms and legs, and very intricate patterns or decorations on their bodies. Some people who are fascinated by UFOs and the ideas of ancient aliens visiting Earth long ago think that these figures look a little bit like modern astronauts. They point to the figures' big eyes, which could resemble the helmets of a spacesuit, and their detailed layered designs that might look similar to a suit's protective gear. These enthusiasts speculate that these figures could be artistic depictions of beings from other planets that ancient people might have encountered. On the other hand, experts in history and archaeology see the figures a little bit differently. They usually interpret these figures as having a significant role in the cultural and spiritual life of the people of the time. Many people believe that they served as effigies in religious rituals, possibly to pray for good health, fertility, or bountiful harvests. The large eyes and elaborate designs might have held symbolic meanings, or they were meant to embody certain deities or spirits linked to these aspects of life. Despite the mystery and speculation surrounding them, most scholars agree that these are important artifacts from Japan's ancient past. They provide us with a glimpse into the artistry, beliefs, and everyday concerns of the people who lived thousands of years ago, whether or not their origins are as otherworldly as some might hope. Next up today we have the Abydos Helicopter. The Abydos Helicopter is a name given to a set of carvings found in an ancient Egyptian temple that some people think look like modern machines. These carvings are on a wall in a temple built by Pharaoh Seti I and later added to by his son Ramesses II in Abydos, one of Egypt's ancient cities. When some people look at these carvings, they see shapes that remind them of a helicopter, a submarine, and even a zeppelin, which I definitely had to look up. It's a type of airship. Because of this, some folks who enjoy thinking about ancient mysteries and the possibility of aliens visiting Earth long ago believe these carvings might be proof that ancient Egyptians either knew about these future technologies or were visited by beings from other planets who had such technology. However, experts who study ancient Egypt for a living, known as Egyptologists, have a much simpler explanation. They tell us that what we're seeing is basically an ancient version of a typo. The wall had inscription from Seti I's time, and then years later, Ramesses II decided to change them. When the new inscriptions were carved over the old ones, bits and pieces of both ended up showing up at the same time. This overlapping made some new, unintentional shapes that just happened to look a bit like modern vehicles to some people. I guess when you're doing ancient hieroglyphs, you don't have an eraser. In short, while the idea of ancient Egyptians knowing about helicopters or getting a visit from time travelers is very exciting, experts believe it might just be a case of old carvings mixing together and our brains just trying to make sense of the jumbled shapes by seeing them as something familiar. I mean, it definitely does make a lot of sense. Next up today we have the Tassili Niger paintings. These paintings are ancient artworks found on rock walls in the Sahara Desert of Algeria. They are thought to be up to 12,000 years old, which places them in the Neolithic or the New Stone Age, which is a period when humans were transitioning from hunting and gathering to farming and settling in communities. Among these paintings, there are some very peculiar figures that stand out, of course, or else we really wouldn't be talking about it. They are much larger than the human figures depicted and have big, round heads that some say look like helmets. Their bodies appear to be covered in some kind of gear, leading to very imaginative theories that these could be depictions of beings from another planet, hence the nickname the Great Martians. However, experts in archaeology explain these figures a little differently. They suggest that these are not literal representations, but rather symbolic ones. The large size and distinctive features could signify importance or power, much like how religious or mythological figures are often depicted in art throughout human history. The round heads and gear might represent ceremonial masks and attire, not spacesuits. Not only this, but the astronaut interpretation largely comes from a modern perspective, influenced by our fascination with space travel and science fiction, and to the people who created these paintings, the figures likely had a significant spiritual or mythological meaning, possibly representing gods, spirits, or ancestors. Or maybe it really was aliens. I mean, at the end of the day, I wasn't there, so who am I to say? And finally, ending off our list today, we have the Saqqara Bird, probably the most famous out of all of these we've spoken about today. The Saqqara Bird is a small bird-like artifact that was discovered over a century ago in an ancient Egyptian tomb. Despite its age, dating back more than 2,000 years, it has a design that reminds people of modern airplanes or gliders, especially when you look at the shape of its wings, which seem to be designed just right for flying through the air. This has made some people wonder if there's more to the Saqqara Bird than meets the eye. They speculate that maybe this wasn't just a simple toy or piece of art. Instead, they think it might be a model of an aircraft, hinting that ancient Egyptians might have known about or even seen flying machines, possibly shown to them by visitors from outer space. However, this is not necessarily the common view among experts, alright? The experts always come in, they're party poopers for our fun theories. Most archaeologists and historians who study ancient Egypt believed that the Saqqara bird was likely a symbolic object or toy. They think it was meant to represent a bird, which had significant cultural and spiritual meaning in ancient Egyptian society, rather than being a model of an aircraft. Despite the intriguing design, there is no concrete evidence to suggest it was anything more than a representation of birds that the Egyptians were familiar with in their everyday lives. But I do have one question, and that is, how were they able to make it fly, okay? How did they know? I'm not saying it was aliens, but I know the ancient Egyptians were absolutely brilliant, but I just want to know a little more, alright? I'm just a little curious. If only we could speak to just one ancient Egyptian person. Alright, I guess I'm done rambling for now. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!